Every morning, without fail, she walked past a bakery on Mulberry Street, her lips curved in a soft, polite smile that never quite reached her eyes. Her name was Eliza Holloway. She was the kind of woman who never raised her voice, never left a dish in the sink, and always greeted everyone in town with that same delicate smile, like it had been carved there, permanent and untouchable. The townsfolk adored her, or pitied her. It was hard to tell the difference. "She's been through so much," they whispered. "Poor thing." Eliza lived alone in the old Holloway mansion, a decaying Victorian estate that sat on a hill overlooking the town. Everyone knew the stories. How her husband went missing in the woods behind the property. How her only daughter drowned in the backyard pond. How no one had stepped inside the house since the last funeral. And yet, every Sunday morning, Eliza was seen kneeling by the rusted gates of the cemetery behind her home. She didn't cry. She didn't pray. She just whispered. Some said she spoke to her husband. Others believed she had lost her mind. But none of them had ever heard the whispers. None of them had ever stood close enough to see what lay behind her smile. It was not sorrow. It was not peace. It was something colder, darker, something that grew louder when the sun set and the wind stirred the dead leaves. One afternoon, a young journalist named Claire Dempsey came into town, chasing whispers of a haunted woman and a forgotten graveyard. She was eager, ambitious, skeptical, convinced that Eliza was just another lonely widow with ghosts in her memory, not in her home. But when Claire knocked on the Holloway mansion's door, it creaked open before her hand even touched the wood. Eliza stood in the hallway, waiting, her smile warm but hollow. "I've been expecting you," she said. "They told me you would come." Claire blinked. "Who told you?" Eliza only smiled wider. "The ones buried behind the house." Claire laughed nervously, stepping inside. "Right, the cemetery." "No," Eliza said, her voice a little softer now. "The one beneath it." Claire paused in the doorway. "Beneath the cemetery?" Eliza tilted her head. "You can still turn back, you know." But curiosity is a dangerous thing. And Claire, like everyone else, didn't understand that behind Eliza's smile was a door. And once you see it, truly see it, there's no closing it again. Not ever. The floorboards creaked under Claire's boots as she stepped into the dim hallway. The air inside the Holloway mansion was heavy, stale, laced with something metallic, something old. Eliza moved gracefully, her heels silent on the rotting wood, her dress brushing the edges of dusty furniture covered in white sheets. Paintings lined the walls, faded portraits of solemn faces, all bearing that same delicate, chilling smile. Claire couldn't help herself. "Are those your family?" Eliza glanced at the portraits. They were. Once. Claire swallowed her discomfort. "I heard about your daughter. Your husband, too. I'm sorry." Eliza stopped walking. "You shouldn't be." There was something about the way she said it that made Claire hesitate. A subtle tremor crept up her spine. Still, she pressed on. She had questions, too many, and this was her story now. They reached the back door. Beyond it, the cemetery sprawled like a forgotten garden. Crooked headstones tangled in ivy, cracked marble angels with weathered wings, and a creeping mist that clung to the ground like breath on a mirror. Eliza opened the door slowly. "The graves are shallow," she said, almost dreamily. "That's why they whisper so loud." Claire pulled her coat tighter, stepping into the chill. "You talk like they're still alive." "They're not," Eliza answered. "But they remember. That's worse." Claire glanced around. The place was unnerving, yes, but there was no sign of the supernatural. No blood, no bones, just silence. The quiet kind that hums beneath the surface, waiting. She took out her recorder. "Tell me about the ones beneath the cemetery. You said they weren't buried here." "No," Eliza said. "They buried themselves." Claire raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" Eliza smiled. It was wider this time. Teeth like porcelain. Lips stretched too far. "It means they were never meant to rest." Lightning cracked in the distance. For a moment, Claire saw something shift between the tombstones. A figure. Then another. But when she blinked, they were gone. She turned back to Eliza. "What exactly happened here?" Eliza's eyes gleamed. You still think you came here for a story? That's adorable. Claire stepped back instinctively. What are you talking about? But Eliza was already walking deeper into the graveyard, humming something soft and strange, like a lullaby made of broken syllables. Claire followed, against her better judgment. The mist grew thicker, the headstones older, and then Eliza stopped at a mound of earth that didn't look like the others. It was fresh. No stone, no name, just soil. She turned to Claire. You want to know whose grave this is? Claire hesitated. Sure. Eliza's smile widened to something unnatural. Yours. A wind howled through the trees. The sky darkened. The ground beneath Claire's feet felt suddenly soft, unstable. And then, something reached out from the earth. A hand. Claire stumbled backward, breath caught in her throat, her boots sinking slightly into the soft soil as the hand pushed further through the earth, pale, wrinkled, fingers like roots twisted in agony. The skin was gray, almost translucent, and the nails were caked in mud. Don't run, Eliza said gently, tilting her head. It's worse when you run. But Claire was already moving, scrambling through the rows of crooked headstones, her recorder slipping from her coat pocket and vanishing into the mist behind her. She didn't care. She had to get away. From the cemetery. From the grave. From Eliza. The fog thickened with every step, curling around her legs like fingers trying to pull her down. She couldn't even see the house anymore. The trees above swayed without wind. There was no sound but her own frantic breath and the whispers. They were rising now. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Low, mournful, pleading. Angry. You weren't supposed to come. The voices groaned. She brought you here. She promised us quiet. She promised you. Claire spun, eyes wide. Shapes moved in the fog, some crawling, others limping, bone and rot in black eyes that held memory. Eliza! Claire screamed. What is this? From somewhere in the mist, Eliza's voice came, calm and sweet as ever. You asked for the truth, didn't you? Claire's back hit a tree, and her hand instinctively reached for her phone, but the signal was dead, the screen flickering with static and flashes of faces she didn't recognize. Screaming, gasping, smiling. The ground beneath her cracked like thin ice. And then Eliza appeared again. Only now, her skin was pale as marble. Her smile had split at the corners, red and wet. Her eyes were no longer blue but hollow, like two deep sockets filled with shadow. They all smiled once, she said softly. Just like me. Just like you. Claire shook her head, trembling. Why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything, Eliza whispered, stepping closer. They're simply taking what they were promised. Around them, the cemetery seemed to swell and breathe. The trees bent inward, the fog thickened, and the ground pulsed like something alive. Claire turned and ran again, but the path had changed. The graveyard no longer had rows. No clear direction, only twists, loops, dead ends. Every turn brought her back to the same mound of fresh earth, the same open grave, and the same hand. Only now more had joined it, reaching, clawing, pulling something up. Or someone. Claire fell to her knees, panic overtaking reason. Her thoughts scattered, her limbs heavy. Please, she whispered. Please let me go. Eliza knelt beside her, resting a cold hand on her shoulder. You've seen behind the smile now, she said. There's no going back. And from the depths of the grave, something began to rise. Slowly, deliberately, smiling. The thing that rose from the grave wore a familiar shape. Claire's breath froze in her lungs as her eyes locked with its face, her own. But not quite. The skin was pallid, torn at the cheek, an eye clouded by decay. Its lips were curled into a grotesque smile, just like Eliza's, just like the portraits, just like the statues at the gates. It looked at Claire with something worse than recognition. It looked at her with ownership. Eliza stood tall now, her head tilted in a mockery of kindness, her fingers brushing through Claire's hair like a mother soothing a frightened child. This is where your story ends, she said softly. But theirs continues through you. Claire tried to speak, but her voice cracked. She scrambled back on her hands, nails digging into damp soil, searching for anything real, anything normal. But all she could hear were the whispers, circling, layered over one another like the rustling of dead leaves. She smiled too wide. She stayed too long. She listened when she should have run. The ground split open beside her. Another grave. Then another. Dozens. Hundreds. All of them fresh. All of them waiting. From each, a version of herself emerged, some bloodied, some burned, some with eyes sewn shut, others with twisted necks or shattered jaws. All of them smiling. All of them Claire. Eliza knelt in the center of it all, arms outstretched like a conductor before an orchestra of the damned. "They're not ghosts," she said. "They're echoes. Echoes of choices made too late." Claire tried to run again, but her legs buckled beneath her. Her limbs no longer obeyed. Her skin felt thinner, fragile, like wax under a flame. One of the other Claires stepped toward her and touched her cheek. "You were curious," it said in her voice, but warped, like it had been repeated too many times in the dark. "Just like us." Claire opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came. The fog surged inward. The sky went black. And in the final moment before the world fell silent, Claire saw Eliza turn her back and walk calmly toward the mansion, her silhouette dissolving into shadow. The cemetery closed behind her, and Claire's smile began to form. Too wide, too empty, too late. Claire's face, her copy's faces, surrounded her now. They didn't breathe. They didn't blink. They simply stared, smiling, watching, waiting. And Claire couldn't remember what fear used to feel like. Only cold, only silence, only the growing numbness crawling through her bones like frost. She stumbled through the mist, dragging herself away from the crowd of echoes. Her body felt borrowed now, like it belonged to the fog, to the whispers, to the grave that had already written her name before she'd ever arrived. And still, behind her she heard laughter. Not loud, not joyful, quiet, pleased. Eliza. Somehow, Claire found herself back at the mansion. The door stood open again, though she didn't remember walking there. Didn't remember choosing. Inside, the portraits on the wall had changed. No longer stiff Victorian ancestors. Now it was her, Claire. Her face again and again, dressed in different clothing, posed in different rooms. Some crying, some screaming, some caught mid-breath as if surprised. All smiling. Each one bore a small brass plaque beneath it. Claire Dempsey, gifted to the root. The walls pulsed. The ceiling groaned. The house was alive now, breathing with her heartbeat, echoing every tremble of her soul. Claire backed into the foyer, only to see the staircase rising up like the ribs of a great beast. At the top stood Eliza, draped in black lace, her arms folded gently, eyes filled with a kind of ancient mercy. "You're adjusting beautifully," she said. "It takes some longer than others." Claire gritted her teeth. "You did this to them." "I didn't do anything," Eliza said. "They came willingly, just like you. For answers, for stories, for truth." She began descending the stairs, each step creaking like it mourned. "There's always a price for truth," she whispered, "especially the kind buried beneath graves." Claire felt the weight pressing in again, like the walls were folding, like the house wanted to keep her, wanted to pull her in. "Eliza," Claire said, her voice a raw whisper. "What are you?" Eliza paused on the final step. Her smile fell, just for a moment, and what Claire saw beneath that smile was not a woman. It was a thing made of grief and time and hollow laughter, a thing that had once been human, but had fed too long on memory, on rot, on the stories of the dead whispered into her ears by roots grown fat with forgotten names. Then the smile returned. "Just a good hostess," she said. Behind Claire, the front door slowly closed. Click. Locked. The floor beneath her shifted, no longer wood, but soil. Damp and deep. Claire turned to find the hallway stretching longer than before, darker, lined with mirrors that did not reflect her, but the others, every Claire who had ever entered. And at the far end of the corridor, the whispering began again. Low, crooning, calling. Claire walked down the hallway, not because she wanted to, because something pulled. The mirrors on either side flickered with movement, Not reflections, but versions. Each Claire passed her gaze, like they were watching her through glass, trapped behind a thin film of reality, desperate but silent. One of them banged her fists against the inside of the mirror. Another scratched at the surface with broken nails, her eyes black voids, her smile bloodied. Claire kept walking. The walls whispered names she didn't know, some in languages she didn't recognize, some in voices that sounded like children, or men gurgling through wet throats, or women humming lullabies out of tune. At the end of the corridor stood a door. It was made of bone, real bone, spines and ribs and skulls fused into an arch that pulsed like it had a heartbeat of its own. Carved into it, in letters that bled softly, were the words, "Root of memory, fruit of regret." Claire reached for the handle. It was warm, too warm. Behind her, the hallway vanished. No more mirrors, no more escape. Just a door, just forward. She opened it. The room beyond was impossibly vast, a black cathedral beneath the earth, its ceiling disappearing into endless darkness, its floor a shallow pool of still, ink-like water that rippled with her every breath. And in the center, a tree, massive, dead, or sleeping. Its bark was blackened, cracked open in places like scorched flesh, and its roots spread across the floor like veins, twisting into the walls, the air, the water. Human limbs jutted from the bark, some decayed, some fresh. Faces, half-formed, grew like knots in the wood. Claire stepped closer, breath shallow. At the base of the tree, something hung. A swing. Old rope. Rotten wood. It swayed gently, though there was no wind. Beneath it a hole. Deep. Black. Open. She knelt beside it and peered in, and what she saw shattered something inside her. Not a void. Not dirt. Not hell. Stories. All of them. Trapped, repeating. Memories that weren't hers. Lives lost and rewritten. People lured in by curiosity, by pain, by Eliza. And every single one ended the same way. With a smile. Eliza's voice echoed behind her, though Claire couldn't see her. You thought this was a story. But it's not. It's a root. And roots grow when you feed them. Claire stood slowly, feeling something shift inside her chest, something that didn't belong to her. She looked down. Her shadow was no longer hers. It was smiling. Claire's shadow smiled wider. She stepped back instinctively, but it stayed in place, twisted at the feet, grinning up at her like it had been waiting to be seen. And as she moved, it stretched the wrong way, reaching not with arms, but with intention. From behind, Eliza's footsteps echoed across the black water, though the surface never rippled. Claire didn't turn. She couldn't. She felt the air change as Eliza came closer, thickening, cooling, like the moment just before a storm or just after a last breath. You've already stepped through, Eliza said. You're part of it now. Claire swallowed, her voice raw. Part of what? Eliza circled slowly, her reflection absent from the dark floor. The memory beneath the memory. The roots of what we bury: grief, guilt, the truth we pretend to forget. She gestured to the massive tree behind Claire. This isn't a place, Claire. It's a consequence. Claire turned, her jaw clenched, eyes burning. This is you. You lure people here, trap them. For what? A tree? A story? Eliza tilted her head gently. You still think this is about me? That I'm the one feeding the roots? She stepped aside, motioning toward the bark. Claire looked closer, and saw her own hand slowly pressing out through the cracks in the wood, fingers writhing, trying to claw free. Dozens of her. Pieces. Versions. Every possibility she'd denied. Every path she didn't take. They were inside the tree. No, Claire backed away. This isn't real. Eliza didn't respond. Instead, the bark of the tree groaned and split wider with a sound like bones breaking underwater. From the rupture, a figure emerged, shaking, slick with black sap. It fell to the ground, gasping, naked and pale. Claire recognized the face before the thing could open its eyes. It was her, but younger, happier, whole. The version of herself before the trauma, before the story, before the first question was ever asked. The version that never went looking for Eliza. Claire staggered backward. What is this? Eliza smiled, but softer this time. This is what you lost. The younger Claire lifted her head, confused and afraid, her eyes begging for understanding. She looked up at herself, like a child searching for answers in a broken mirror. You can return, Eliza whispered, but only one of you walks out. Claire stared at her twin, her innocence, her beginning, then at the swing, at the roots, at the darkness. The whisper swelled again. Choose, berry or bloom. She smiled too soon. The floor trembled. The tree moaned. The pool reflected not the present, but all the could-have-beens. And the door behind her was gone. Claire stood between the tree and the hole, between her past and her shadow, between who she was and what she had become. The swing creaked behind Claire, though no one touched it. The sound was soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to any living thing. Claire took a step forward. The younger version of herself, barefoot, blinking, soaked in sap, stood slowly. Her expression wasn't just fear anymore. There was something else building beneath the surface. Confusion, sadness, recognition. Eliza, Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. What happens if I choose her? Eliza stood at the edge of the pool, unmoving. Then the story begins again. And if I don't? Eliza didn't answer right away. Her eyes, black and endless, studied Claire like a painter deciding where to place the final brushstroke. Then it ends in silence. Claire turned back to the tree. The bark had begun to shift again, a slow writhing like breath under skin. A face, hers, pressed up against the surface from the inside, its mouth open in a silent scream. Another hand reached out, grasping, clawing. Behind that, a dozen more. All her, all trapped. Claire's knees threatened to buckle. I didn't come here to choose between myself, she said, more to the dark than to Eliza. I came to find out what happened. To you. To this place. To the whispers. Eliza smiled, but this time it cracked. Hairline fractures split across her cheeks, her lips stretching too wide, her skin brittle as porcelain under pressure. You still don't understand, she said. She stepped forward, and now her reflection did appear in the pool. But it wasn't her reflection. It was something twisted, with antlers, hollow eyes, 100 smiles stacked like teeth. I was the first, Eliza said. The first what? She looked up, and for the first time, there was pain in her voice. The first who listened. The tree let out a sound like wind being choked. Roots burst from the water, slithering toward Claire and the younger version of her, encircling them in a slow, patient spiral. One root coiled around the swing and snapped it clean in half, letting the rope fall into the pool like veins cut open. The sap bled faster from the bark now. It ran in rivulets across the floor, drawing lines and spirals, forming symbols Claire didn't recognize but felt. Symbols that pulsed in her chest like old scars being remembered. The younger Claire began to cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just soft tears. Like she already knew she didn't belong in this place. Like she understood that she was the illusion. Claire knelt beside her, trembling. I'm sorry, she whispered. You didn't deserve this. The younger self looked up, and for a moment, just a breath, there was peace between them. But the moment shattered when one of the faces in the bark screamed aloud. It was Claire's voice. A raw, animal scream of someone who had seen too much. More hands burst forth. More roots cracked the floor. And Eliza's form, fractured and flickering, began to sink into the pool, smiling even as her face melted like wax. This is not your grave, she said, but it can be your home. Claire stood once more, holding the hand of her younger self, surrounded by the dead weight of her own possibilities. The tree pulsed. The hole beneath it yawned open wider. One step forward would end it, or begin it, or bury everything. And above it all, the cemetery behind her smile waited to bloom again. Claire looked into the eyes of her younger self, then into the pulsing hollow beneath the tree. She let go. I'm not going back. She stepped forward alone. The tree opened, and the roots embraced her, not with cruelty, but with understanding. The whispers faded. Eliza watched as the bark sealed shut once more. Another smile, another name. The cemetery behind her smile grew by one, and the world above never noticed she was gone.